want to just do a little experiment. I'm going to present a scenario and have each of us see what response we come up with. Let's assume that in the next half hour, we have to be at another venue for another event. It's a 15-minute walk from here. We know walking is good for our health, but it's a bit hot and humid outside. So the organizers tell us that there's a free bus and we can take that. What would most of us choose? Be honest. You'll choose the bus, right? We'll say, I'll worry about my health in the long term. Right now it's too hot and anyway the bus is free, so let's just take the bus and go. Then the organizers say, oh, we made a mistake. The bus is actually not free. We need to pay $20 each for the ride to the next venue. Now what would most of us say? We'd say, oh, that's too much. Let me take a walk. Anyway, it's good for my health. So what changed in the two scenarios? This is what the economists call relative pricing. When we see something less expensive than the other, whether that is real cost or imagined cost, we choose that option. The same economic principle drives corporations, in fact, even more starkly. See, corporations are a collective of individuals that come together for an economic purpose. They really have no conscience or soul of their own. It's the collective consciousness of individuals who work in those corporations that can make a difference. The choices that corporations make about the use of resources is determined by their relative pricing. So really, there are only two things that can influence the choice that corporations make about what resources they use, how much they use, and what they do with the environment. One is public policy. That is, the government can enact policies that either make certain resources more expensive by taxing them, or make certain resources cheaper by subsidizing them. So that changes the relative pricing of various resources, and that can influence the choice corporations make. But individuals have a conscience. And their consciousness about social costs and benefits of the choices that are made is different from that of corporations. Corporations, as I said, don't have a conscience of their own. Companies that go beyond what we normally expect and imagine companies to do are those that are led by individuals in leadership positions that do have a conscience and that do actually have a vision. They can see the impact of their decisions in the long term, and they can envision what the implications for the relative pricing of resources can be in the future and not just today. The other thing that influences companies is their reputation. So, as we've all seen in the last couple of decades, key stakeholders can influence companies. That is, key investors, employees, even consumers can boycott companies if they believe that their products are being made in a manner that is not sustainable and harmful of the environment. But once again, each of these categories is a group of individuals who can actually exercise that influence and, sort of push companies to take the right decision. I also believe that a large part of the pressure that we see on natural resources around us, be it water, clean air, or minerals, is driven by the consumerist desires of individuals. We consume and buy more than we need. Certainly all of us in this room, I think that's true. But we do it because we can afford it. We waste water because it's cheap. In today's economic price, it's not very expensive, so we are not careful how we use it. But when you realize that no amount of money can buy you clean water or fresh air, clean air, or drinking water, then you sit up and think. Because the relative price in terms of what you perceived as being cheap versus its impact on your health, which is priceless, makes you sit up and think whether what we are doing is right or not. So the agent of change is really the individual, each of us. I think the other truth is that we can all change only ourselves, not others. Only once in a while, there is a Guruji who has the power to change others. We can only think for ourselves and change ourselves. But there is power in that change. I think many times we see so much happening around us, so much neglect, and you tend to say to yourself, how does it matter if I do something different? It's too much of an ocean. It's too overwhelming a problem. Nothing that I do is going to make an impact. And one of my lessons or learnings through this spiritual journey has been that that's actually not true. In management jargon, we have this theory about tipping point. And what it says is that you need a fairly small critical mass of people to think in a particular fashion for that change, to be very impactful. I guess a bit like the butterfly effect. So individual consciousness and then collective consciousness, I think we all know through Guruji's teachings that can actually, affect changes, and you don't need everybody in the world to change for that change to happen. The good news, I think, is that some change is happening. Corporations are changing. There are many I can name who are conscious of what they are doing to the environment. And these are, sometimes much maligned multinational corporations. But I do know that companies like PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Shell, and there are several others that are doing a lot to, preserve the environment, maybe in their own self-interest, but so what? They're conscious of it and they're doing a fair bit. I think even more encouraging is that our children, I believe, are more conscious about conserving than we were at their age. Maybe we grew up, in a life of scarcity, so our desire to sort of get more for ourselves, whereas they may have grown up in abundance. But I definitely see that the generation next is more conscious about conserving the environment. I'd like to end by saying that there is every grain of truth in the saying that each one of us has to be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you.